Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U podcast brought to you right here on the Crossover channel. My name's Kanaye. I'm joined with Josh. Today, we're going to be ranking the last 10 national champions in college basketball. Of course, Florida won it this year. Congrats to Florida Gators. Amazing run they went on. Great year. But we're going to see how they stack up against the last 10 national champions and where we have them in our rankings. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on the channel, please do anything you can to engage with the content we put out. Whether that's liking the video, subscribing, or telling other people about it, really does help with getting our videos out to more people. So let's get it started. Let's start our first picks. I have 2024 UConn. I'll ask you, Josh, if you have anything different there.
Nope. 2024 UConn is still the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to. The way we're ranking these teams is we're looking at their whole seasons, not just their tournament runs. Of course, you look at the tournament runs. That makes it even harder to rank these teams when it's already hard to rank them as it is. But you look at UConn's season, went 37-3, won both the Big East regular season and the Big East tournament. Obviously, won the national championship, won every game in the tournament by double digits. And I mean, they had a really solid roster all around. First team All American Tristan Newton, Coach of the Year and Dan Hurley, and it's tough to see one of these other teams taking down 2024 UConn. But there has been arguments for 2018 Nova, who is my second team on this list.
Also have them as my second team.
Yeah, I mean, again, 2018 Nova, 36-4 record on the year, really great throughout the Big East regular season. They won the Big East regular season championship, but did not win the Big East tournament. Of course, Big East tournament super competitive, arguably the best conference tournament in the country. But yeah, really good team. Of course, you had Jalen Brunson, who was National Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, first team All-American. Just the countless amount of NBA players they had on that roster. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo was coming off the bench. You saw what he did in the Natty against Michigan, scoring 30, I believe, off the bench in that game, which was crazy. But again, the NBA players you had on that team between Brunson, of course, DiVincenzo, Mikal Bridges, I believe Pascal was on that team as well. Of course, Jay Wright, you already know. Well, what a great coach he was at Villanova while he was coaching there. But yeah, I guess we don't disagree too much. I don't think we disagree too much on this third pick either in 2019 Virginia.
Definitely. I mean, UVA that's the unicorn season for me. I think out of all the recent years of champs, they are still the unicorn. Obviously, coming from that 2018 first round exit to UMBC, that number one overall seed, to winning it all. We haven't seen it repeated. Purdue got close last year. They couldn't do it. But the insane journey and just the insane, like, just the whole lore around 2019 Virginia is still so amazing. One of three ACC teams to get a number one seed, didn't win it. It was supposed to be Duke's year. It was Zion's time. UNC was great. UVA was just another team in the pack in their own great conference, and they just plowed through. They had a lot of luck. They had a lot of skill. There was a lot of
Definitely.
moments. I'll tell you that as much.
Yeah.
As much as you want to say on whether it was all fair and whatnot, it was still an incredible journey for Virginia, and to win in overtime against a very solid Texas Tech team, it puts them up there. They have to be one of the best teams that at least I've seen win a natty.
Yeah, and I mean, they were the national champion in one of the best tournaments I've watched in my life. I would probably put that 2019 NCAA tournament as the best tournament I've ever watched.
I still do.
And I mean, you have to give them a lot of credit for winning the ACC regular season title in a year where Duke was as dominant as they were with that freshman class in the regular season. Of course, that Duke team didn't pan out amazing in the tournament. But again, with the UVA squads coached under Tony Bennett, you know that they're going to have great defense. But I really do feel like this was the one year where their offensive firepower matched the defensive tenacity that they brought. And again, a lot of NBA players on that squad between Kyle Guy, who recently retired, Ty Jerome, and DeAndre Hunter, who are both now on the Cavs together. So that's pretty cool to see. And yeah, they're really good all-around team. They finished 35-3 on the season, and I would argue they probably have the best story out of all these teams on this list. Like you mentioned, them losing to a 16 seed the year prior, then coming back and winning the whole thing. But yeah, I think our next pick, I have 2016 Nova as my mistake. I have 2021 Baylor.
Okay, yeah, I have
at number 4.
I also 2021 Baylor.
Yeah.
Honestly, another very similar type of unicorn-esque season. Everyone really underestimates this Baylor squad. Obviously, once again, it was supposed to be Gonzaga's year. They were undefeated. They looked like the best team that had ever played college ball. They made it to the Natty, and just Baylor shut them out. I really think that if Davion Mitchell had become an insane player in the NBA, I think Baylor would have been looked at such a higher level in the college basketball world. I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons as to why this team is so underrated, but they're definitely up there. I think honestly, even I might be underselling how good of a team they have been, or were at least.
Yeah, and I mean, again, they were the team that prevented Gonzaga from going undefeated that year, which is crazy to think about. Um, I think a lot of people going into the game expected Gonzaga to roll over Baylor potentially, but Baylor was just so sound defensively. Of course, they had Davion Mitchell. Jared Butler was the Final Four most outstanding player. They had guys that just really bought into what Scott Drew wanted to do. And I mean, yeah, some people put an asterisk on that season, considering that was shortened because of the first season after the pandemic, and they didn't play as many games. The fan environment. I don't even remember if they allowed fans to be at tournament games. It might have been only very few, if any. But I think nonetheless, you still got great games in that tournament, and that was one of the more impressive championship runs I've seen.
Definitely.
So at my number 5 spot, I have 2016 Villanova. I think you might have a different pick
I
here,
have Florida in this one. I really see Florida
Florida.
as like a crossroads style team. They were as of how we look at, they were the lowest number one seed of the one seeds to make it. Didn't really feel like it at all. They were definitely a squad that could be a little higher, given multiple years in the future. Have some hindsight will be necessary, but just 2 weeks after them winning it all, I just see them like they were great. They had an insane comeback and clutch gene that I don't think any other team in this list can compare it to. But when you look at the other squads that they would have been facing up with, I just don't think they would have been the other four squads mentioned. Great team though, but just not it.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I don't have Florida too far behind. I have them coming up actually. But 2016 Nova, I mean, they won arguably the greatest watch for a national championship game ever, with Chris Jenkins nailing the buzzer beater to beat UNC in 2016. And I mean, you just look at the roster makeup; they were so loaded. Of course, a lot of the guys didn't have as big of a roles until as big of the roles as they did on that 2018 team, like Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, DiVincenzo. Those guys didn't get as many minutes as they did in 2018, but still, you had great players like Josh Hart, who was an All American that season, I believe. Ryan Arcidiacono, one of the best college guards we've seen over the last 10 seasons. Eric Pascal as well, who maybe didn't play as much. And then of course you got Chris Jenkins, just total onions nailing that shot. And I think that team is really good. And sometimes I feel like they're not given the credit that that team deserves. I mean, just they were 35-5, won the Big East regular season, didn't win the Big East tournament, so maybe that takes the resume down a little bit on this list. But I mean, still 35-win season, really good. Won arguably the greatest national championship game we've seen. And yeah, I mean, I got them at number 5. But like I mentioned, Florida's not too far behind for me. I have them at number 6. Like you mentioned, I mean, just they showcase the ability that they're never out of a game completely. Almost every game they were down double digits at one point, and they just had no quit. They were so analytics driven with what Todd Golden wanted to do and his assistants that he has on his staff. And they just had guys who bought in. They overpaid a little bit to get Walter Clayton back when he was possibly thinking about a Patino reunion at St. John's. Of course, they got Elijah Martin from FAU, huge get. Alex Kahn and Thomas Howe really stepped up this year. And they had, I mean, other guys stepped up too. Will Richards, Ruben Chinilu, really good team. Love the coaching staff. Think they're going to be good for a long time Florida program. But yeah, like you mentioned, I do think that a lot of teams on this list, they do kind of have more of a killer instinct where if they get up double digits, they're going to be able to expand that lead to 20 or so, and not let up the way that some of these teams in this year's tournament kind of got comfortable and let Florida get back in the game.
Definitely. My six is 2017 UNC. Honestly, another good squad, another great championship game, very underrated, I feel. But they never really felt more than just a staple point. I mean, if you lose the way you lost in 2016, you come back with a vengeance. I feel like
Right.
that's not just the biggest apostrophe for this team, asterisk for this team, my bad. I just it's hard to really look at the team in any other way than that, especially since they were smushed in between two Nova years. And I think both Nova teams kind of showed a little more character to them than UNC. I think they could be a little higher depending on how you view them, but I think six is probably a good spot for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could see where you're coming from there. At my number 7, I have 2015 Duke. I think a lot of I just think it's tough through the year, the 10-year span that they fall in, just with so many other great teams. Because I think this team doesn't get a lot of the recognition that they deserve. Maybe I'm not giving them enough recognition, putting them this low on the list. Because I mean, they had a lot of elite players. Of course, Jaleel Okafor, amazing freshman season. I mean, he might have been National Player of the Year that year. I can't fully remember. But on top of that, Quinn Cook, Justice Winslow, Tyus Jones, all guys who went on to play in the NBA and carve out a role, if not excel. I mean, yeah, I mean, they had a really good year, 35-4, but they didn't win. They're one of two teams on this list to not win their regular season championship nor their tournament championship. So that kind of takes them down a little bit for me, just because I think it is important to look at what they did the full season, outside of just their tournament run and player accolades as well.
Definitely. My 7, I have 2016 Nova. I'm a little bit lower than Kanaye just because, once again, very, very close victory. I think as great as the buzzer beater is, it's still a win at the buzzer. I think that UNC squad was
Yeah,
still
that's
slightly
fair.
better than Nova. I mean, you can really go back and forth on that one, but that's, I would say, an older argument. And especially when you compare them to UNC and then the Nova sandwich, I guess, in between the UNCs, I just feel like that
Yeah.
they're slightly worse squad, but they're all very similar in my mind because I guess they just kind of are given my age and my time watching college basketball. So I just put Nova at 7 because it's just the best point of play for I see for them. I feel.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you out there. At my number, what is it, 8 we're on? Yeah. I have 2017 North Carolina. This was a year, I mean, they played Gonzaga. That was a game that I feel like, you had to win. It would have really been the ultimate underdog story if Gonzaga had won that game. But I just didn't really look at their tournament as super impressive. I know Luke May had his big moment that year, and they had also really good players outside of that too, like Joel Berry, Justin Jackson, um, Theo Pinson too, who I don't think he played as big of a role on that team as many people think now with Theo Pinson's popularity with his podcast, and how he kind of talks down on some guys. But I won't get too much into that. Might have been a driving factor in why Cadeau transferred, but yeah, I mean, again, their tournament run was not something that absolutely blew me away. They didn't win the ACC regular season that year either, and they have the second most losses on this list. So I definitely think that is important to consider when placing them here. But again, that was a really solid run for them. Nothing that absolutely blew me away that you're watching, but it's still nonetheless a solid team. Just kind of unfortunate landing in this 10-year span.
Definitely. I would put 8 for Duke 2015. Good squad, but if you're gonna look at even you look at Coach K's other natty teams, I just feel like this is probably the worst one of them. And I get it, they're the farthest team back that we're choosing from, so my memory is not the best here, but just in comparison to these other squads, I just feel like the game that they were playing in 2015 probably doesn't translate as well as it does in the 2020s with some of these higher level squads. Great team, obviously Julie Okafor, Tyus Jones, everything can I mention, but just they don't really have the type of mentality or at least style or like there's just something there that I feel like I would remember otherwise. Like you would remember a squad no matter how long it's been based on just how good of a team they were. They never really they never I've never really had that feeling towards 2015 Duke, and that's why I'm leaving them towards the lower part of this list.
Yeah, I definitely hear you out there. At number 9, I have 2023 UConn. Now, this is a team that I think really relied so much on playing when they were hot, and really it was kind of just you were waiting on them in a lot of their tournament games for the Avalanche to happen, where they go out and win. I mean, they won every tournament game that year by double digits. Of course, again, they really relied on their confidence and their hot streaks. There were definitely points, people made the argument that they kind of head to toe did look like the best team in the country, but that makes you wonder, how did they not win more games? They lost the most games out of any team on this list with 8 losses on the year, 31-8 finish. You just wonder what happened in January where they lost 6 of 8. And again, they didn't win the Big East regular season nor the Big East tournament. So I think that definitely takes them down on this list for me when we're looking at the season in whole. Of course, really dominant tournament run. And you did have 3 NBA players on that team, specifically from that year's draft class with Hawkins, Sonogo, and Andre Jackson. but you also had other guys who came back for the next year and played bigger roles. But again, that team was really relying on how hot they were. And they really played their best basketball going into the tournament. They got hot at the right time and they got lucky. But yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't every day that they played their best game, and I think if they have a if they run into one of these other teams, then it could get tricky for them to be able to win. So I have them at 9, just considering their 8 losses on the season, didn't win either the conference regular season nor the tournament. So
That's honestly a fair argument. 9, I have 2022 Kansas. I think this is just a team that, once again, never really had a strong squad. It never really was tested, so we never really know how tough they were. I mean, I get that UNC squad was very underrated, but Kansas never really faced anything particularly strong. I mean, that maybe that Villanova squad in the Final Four that they easily dusted off, but I don't really know if I could put Kansas anything higher than anything recent. I mean, they definitely don't have the talent player wise that I've seen in other squads. I mean, I liked Grady Dick. I liked the play style of Chai, but it's not really anywhere near any of these other topper squads. They really don't fit anything I would think about with a national champion compared to this year, last year. Not really there for me.
yeah, I definitely hear you out. I have 2022 Kansas at my number 10 spot for a lot of the same reasons you said. Just I think you can make the argument they're the least talented player on the roster wise, out of these 10 teams. And yeah, Christian Brown, great player. Like you mentioned, Ochai was solid, really good player, college player at Kansas. But like you mentioned, they kind of weren't really tested in terms of some of the teams they were playing. There were really no juggernauts that year. I definitely think they outmatched Villanova, just Nova being so reliant on Gillespie that season. And just, yeah, I think you have to consider they were down 15 points to a number 8 seed in the national championship game in UNC. And regardless of how hot UNC was and that run they went on, ending Coach K's career and all that, again, I think you kind of have to take some points away from them just for being down that much to an 8 seed. Of course, they came back, won the game, good on them for it. But yeah, there was nothing that particularly stood out really about roster makeup nor talent or play style wise. That, of course, really good team, but they weren't the most aesthetically pleasing to watch. But I do think it is important to mention that they are one of 2 teams on this list that won both the regular season championship and their tournament championship. So maybe I'm putting them a little too low, but yeah, I think they're probably the least most impressive team on this list to me, which is why I have them at 10.
Yeah, my 10 is 23 UConn. I think it really is night and day between 23 UConn and 24 UConn. Obviously, that team wasn't really expected to win. They were the only not 1 seed on this list, so it was pretty easy to pick them out from the pack. They had once again a lot of momentum. They were really good before that January slump that Kanaye mentions. But I think it really was momentum, like the tournament momentum that they gained, and the fact that they never faced anything above a 3 seed in that entire tournament. I think that just plays a big factor into why they're so low on this list.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you out there. Just really quickly, I do want to ask because it is something that I think about a good amount. Say 2023 UConn is playing their A game at the height of their abilities. Do you think they have any chance of beating 2024 UConn?
Probably not. I
Probably
I
not.
think it's hard to really say because first off, you're matching up players with themselves from 1 year, so
Right, right,
which
right.
kind of puts in a scenario. But where do you like? I think Hawkins and Sonogo were pieces that 2024 UConn would have loved, but I feel like even with them being probably better than the replacements, I just don't see them having a different spot. If you get what I'm saying, and that 2024 UConn team was
Yeah, no,
they were solid all year round. Like
right.
I feel like all these teams maybe had that point, but the difference between 1, 2, and 3, and then maybe like further down is just the consistency throughout the season as well. Like that UConn team was very consistent. Nova squad was very consistent. UVA was consistent almost every single game. You know, like you said, they had like 3 losses. All those 3 teams. It's really hard to say otherwise if any of those teams could be inconsistent given how they played as well. So yeah, no, I think 2024 UConn stands alone right now. Maybe in future times we can talk about it, but right now, I think I
Definitely.
think I think we have a good list to be real with you. I think I have a really good list.
Yeah. I definitely think so too. Obviously, we talked about where we think 2025 Florida stacks up against this sample size of 10 teams from the last 10 seasons. Going in even further into the future, how do you think this Florida team's going to be remembered?
Without a doubt, it's going to be remembered for the Walter Clayton run. It's the
Right.
closest thing we've had to a Shabazz Napier, maybe some sort of I don't even know. Like you mentioned before, it's a one-of-one experience. He has been
Right.
one of the most impactful players this season, and hopefully for many, many other seasons. And then Todd Golden's story too. A guy who had
Yeah.
not won a game in the NCAA tournament before this year, came from San Francisco, tried everything he could to get transfer guys, found lower rated guys than anybody else would have expected to have gotten for a championship caliber team, pushed out an Auburn squad that felt like it was unstoppable, pushed a Houston squad that came off of one of the best wins I've ever seen, and just managed to take a complete hammer to this tournament in a year where arguably it was the hardest tournament for any team to win. I feel, considering how the Final Four ended, how the KenPom teams were ranked. It's it feels like Florida fought the hardest out of any of these squads that we've listed. It's just that all these other squads above them, per se, probably would have just been the number one overall seed, and they would not have had as many issues. Because I think the big reason why we put Florida so low is that Florida had to fight every game. Every game was a battle where you thought they were going to lose. I don't see 2024 UConn losing to in the same ways. I don't see Nova doing the same thing. Maybe Virginia at most, and maybe Baylor in like one or two of these games. I just don't know how anything else happens. It's just Florida had a miracle after miracle after
Yeah.
miracle event. And that's the coolest thing.
Yeah. I really did like how you mentioned that this was such a tough tournament to win. And I really do think this 2025 Florida team is so unique because you really need to consider this is the first year of the true NIL transfer portal kind of like insanity kind of coming to light. Of course, going into 2024, the transfer portal was a thing, NIL was a thing, but guys weren't really seeking out the numbers that they're getting now, or they were going into this season, compared to going into 2024. It wasn't as much about the money. It was transfer portal did kind of start to get a little bit out of hand, but that was more so guys just going school to school. This year, you saw guys get huge numbers in the portal, in terms of the money they were going to be making in NIL going into this year. And I think this team is so important for how teams construct their roster going forward, where you need to get guys who, again, fit your culture and are able to buy in. But yeah, you're probably going to have to overpay for some players like they did with Walter Clayton. And that obviously was a good return on their investment. But this really was kind of the first national champion in this true NIL transfer portal era where it's really, really gotten out of hand at this point. And I'm really curious to see where, taking a look at it outside of this 10-year span of the last 10 champions we just talked about, I really am curious to see how this first kind of true transfer portal NIL insanity era, where this 2025 Florida team stacks up, say 10 years down the road.
No, certainly. It really does depend too. I mean, I don't think Florida was the caliber, or not the caliber, the catalyst for the NIL we're seeing right now. But I just feel like we're in a time and a place where future generations of college basketball squads and coaches will be searching out less homegrown talent, less freshman talent, and will be just paving their way through the list. They'll be scrolling on end until they find the 3-star commit that they think can be the future. And
Right,
hey, that's cool. Walter Clayton Jr. never would have existed in a 2017 world of college basketball. He would have been a small note that only like few students of that university will remember. But Clayton is forever known as a great, great story in the college basketball universe, and I love that. But how do I compare that to previous years because of what I just said? It's just there's really no
right,
way to think about it until we have more years. I think maybe at the end of this decade, I feel like we can look back and that Florida team and say they were the best one because of that reason, turning rags to riches. But if we
right.
see
Yeah,
more stories like this, which I think we will, I think Florida can just turn into a common story, at least to some extent.
most definitely. And I'm really curious to see how again, teams construct their roster going forward. There was, I believe, no ranked guys on this Florida squad. And you had a first year head coach, not first year, never won a tournament game prior to this year. come in and win a national championship. So that opens up the realm of possibilities for who people pick to win the national championship in years in the future. And on top of that, I mean, just culture wise, what you can build. And I'm really curious to see how the analytics side of the game continues to factor into how coaches coach during the game, and roster moves they make. I know Florida and Todd Golden are super analytic driven with all their guys on their coaching staff, their assistants. I know one of them, I forget the name off the top of my head. He was elevated to an assistant coaching position. So I am excited to see how much that continues to factor in what Florida does on the court. But I think that pretty much is going to take care of everything we have for this episode today. Please, as always, again, engage with the content any way you can. Really does help with increasing our viewership and getting these videos out to more people. But until the next episode we put out, we'll see you all next time.
Peace.